This is about modern tertiary education. This has to do with your future. And the whole question, why should you go to university? What is studying about? And what makes it? By the way, I went to an international school myself about, seems like 200 years ago. And so I know what you feel like. I went through it myself. I ended up studying 3 things parallel and graduating in 2 things. So I'll explain you what the origin of that is. All right. What we're going to talk about is a combination of what your future is going to look like. On the one side, you need academic models and theories. On the other side, you have to be a digital person. And by the way, when I mean a digital person, it does not mean that you're only able to switch on your computer. Trust me, we had a candidate started working with us a year ago, and my colleague Olesia, I thought she was going to eat him up. It turns out he knew how to switch on a computer, but he didn't know how to use Word. It was a disaster. It was a real disaster. Now, being digital means understanding how does ChatGPT works? How do I integrate AI? How do I use the tools that are available to me to make my life more efficient? This is really important. Business and studying is about efficiency. Then on the top right, you see working in a coal mine. Why working in a coal mine? Because we live in a world that's getting faster and faster and faster. And probably if you look at your smartphones, the amount of information that you get over the course of the day, our ancestors 100 years wouldn't get in 10 years. My parents probably didn't get in 5 years. And we have to get used to it. That the challenge of today's world is that you have to work like in a coal mine in a global environment. And global environment means that you respect cultures that might be completely different than your own, because only if you show respect to their culture will they show you respect, and then there's a mutual understanding and you're able to work together. This is regardless of what you make. Now, to look a bit at the historic background and what has changed, and here you have to look at where it says deindustrialization. And deindustrialization is when we've gotten to the point where agriculture plays only an insignificant part of your society's GDP. So the economy of your country changes. And this is what we have. Germany, I grew up outside of Munich, about 20 kilometers outside of Munich, which was back then farmland. Nowadays in Germany, farming makes up less than 2% of the total economy. Of total employment, people working in agriculture is also, I think, 1.2% of the entire workforce. Then you have to look at industrialization, the whole aspects of factories, people working in factories. This in Germany has shrunk down to 30%. This is very interesting because we export the technology for factories and the equipment for the factories, but we don't really have our own factories anymore. So here, historically, those of you who know a bit about Germany, obviously Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Audi are the big German car brands. And when I was at university, one in 6 people was working in the automotive industry. When I started working in the automotive industry, it was only 1 in 9 people, and now it's 1 in 15 people. So the importance of manufacturing, that is meant by deindustrialization, when you have less people working in the factories. And then you see the rising stars are the tertiary activities and the quaternary activities. Essentially, that means working with your brain and earning your money with your brain. And that's relatively fun. But it's also more complicated because it's what you call knowledge-based industry. It's extremely boring, I guess, but one of those classical things that happens in school that you say, why the hell are we learning something? I can see you, I'm going to give you this here. Let's see if it works. No, yes, it works, rock and roll, yes. So, it doesn't work on your side. It only works on my side, you know. Anyway, why is this important? Because the way we work has changed. Here, the next slide that looks at classical pyramids in companies. So the traditional hierarchy is a bit like in the military, a bit like in school. Yeah. So you have a steep traditional hierarchy where you have senior management, middle management, and operational management. By the way, the guys in green, they're called transactional workers. Yeah, that's the bricklayer, the guy in the factory, the smaller. There's not a lot of thinking in that. By the way, you can correlate directly in classical companies the relationship of payment to where you are in the pyramid. Now, this in the past has always been connected to the information hierarchy. The higher you are up in the hierarchy, the more you know about anything. And what changed this was 34 years ago. Yeah, 34 years ago. So double the age you probably are. That's where something new came to this planet, the internet. The internet was invented in 1969, back then by the American military, called the ARPANET, and it became public domain in 1991. And this changed the whole world because it changed what was called the information asymmetry. That the guy at the top of the pyramid knew more than the guy at the bottom of the pyramid. And this impacted education. Why? Because you had a flattening of hierarchies. And here, there's probably something that you might have heard in school, do your work, don't think, but do your work. And this was the classical, growing up in Germany, they told me many times, Sasha, don't think, work. Because I had the tendency to think and not study. That changed then later on. With this flattening of hierarchies, in the future, companies will want from you that you're able to think by yourself, not that you are just told what to do. And you'll get to that. And this flattening of hierarchies has a lot to do with you in school. Because what these hierarchies used to make is middle managers. And middle managers are, if you want, like dinosaurs. They are about to be extinct. And technically the term business schools should be replaced by entrepreneurial schools. Why? Because if you want, middle managers are like kids in 8th grade where the teacher tells them what to do, not what to think. So you have to ask yourself, what is the solution for the future? So let's start with something really basic. Let's start with your daily routine. And somehow I have the sensation that although I am probably 40 years older than you, my routine and your routine is exactly the same. Not anymore, but when I went to school. You get up in the morning, get out of bed, get showered, get dressed, have your breakfast, go to school. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Go to school, hang out with your friends, play video games, watch a bit of television, and back to bed. And you know what the nice thing about going to school is right now? And hardly anybody thinks about it. They tell you every day what you have to do. You don't have to think. None of you has to think. You have a schedule, they tell you which books to use, they tell you, you don't have to think. You're like robots, man. And it's beautiful, isn't it? Or are you looking forward to getting out of school? Are you possibly looking forward to this day? Is that what you're looking forward to? Now, the interesting thing is, in this daily routine here, one thing that is missing, you can't really fail. I mean, you have to be a total idiot to fail. They tell you what to do. They tell you what, you got English class, you got math class, you got history class, you got German class, you got Russian class, you got literature, you got to go to sports, then you have your lunch break, you have your early break, you have your physical education. You don't even have to think. This is great. Even the biggest monkey can get through school, right? And the biggest drama is what? Failure. Now, what happens when you fail in school? I see a couple of guys in the second classroom. They look like they have experience with failing. I can't ask. Yeah, he's signaling that he's failed already. What? You failed 3 times already? Jesus Christ! And they also you look like gangsters. This is amazing. So, the certificate of failure. Now, dealing with the certificate of failure in school, well, Possibly one or two have repeated a class already. I hope not, because repeating a class means what? That you're losing time and money, which in the system of school has nothing to do with reality. Because the interesting part is that this leaving school, what happens? And here is this really fascinating aspect. Why does everybody want to get out of school? You're leaving that beautiful place where it's calm, where people, you don't have to think. All you need to do is do a bit of studying, and you get 3 free meals every day. But as research says, 87% of the people who leave high school want to go to college. And then you ask them, why though? Why do you want to go to college? Most people you ask is why they want to study is, and especially in the business field, because you want to study how to get rich quick, realistically. Being rich or successful, as you will see, there's a bit of a problem. Why? Because our definition and understanding of rich is distorted. Why is it distorted? Because using the word rich means what? What does it mean, rich? If you want academic definition of rich, would mean this. It means that you keep your social status without having to work, which essentially means that the beggar living under the bridge is a rich man. Because a beggar doesn't have to go to work, right? He maintains his social status and he can hang the whole day with his friends and get drunk. But would you consider a beggar to be a rich person? This is, and on a side note, in the city of New York, the amount of homeless people since 2018 has increased by 40%. Would you consider them rich people? So first question you have, and something you have to ask yourself, if you go to university, you will go to university not for your teachers. And you're also not going to go for university for your parents. Now, most of the guys in the room, probably if I ask them why they're going to school, is because they don't want to get too much trouble with their parents and not too much trouble with their teachers. Then there's a couple of guys in there who've understood. By the way, from a evolutionary point of view, girls are better in school because they're earlier to understand the consequences of their behavior. They're better at assessing risk. So going to university means you have to do it for yourself. But think about it. Until now, you have been trained to live a life like this. And when you graduate from high school, on that really beloved day, everybody expects you to know what you will do in the future. So that means essentially, and there's a great book on this, to a certain extent, there's a challenge in schools preparing us for making the decision what we want to study at university and why. So I've been to many school fairs, and I remember the first school fair at mine. I went to Munich International School. If somebody asks you, what do you want to study? You answer psychology. It's very hip to study psychology in Germany right now. Then you ask the students, why do you want to study psychology? And they look at you like, what do you mean? It's cool. So you're going to go to university and get a degree in a topic because it's cool? A lot of guys study business because they want to go in the automotive industry. And then you ask them, which part of the automotive industry at the moment is exciting? And they look at you like, but Porsche is cool. Or BMW is cool. By the way, Porsche is not cool at all at the moment, because if you look at it from a business perspective, it's the first time Porsche is losing money. BMW last week published its numbers. They lost 37% of their profit this year. 37%. Pretty much the entire German automotive industry is in a disaster. And why do you think Donald Trump is putting tariffs on European cars to enter the US because the automotive industry in the US is a headache. The only exciting automotive industry right now is the Chinese one, and the Chinese one is heavily subsidized by the government. That means studying business for the wrong reason, studying anything for the wrong reason doesn't make any sense. And this has a lot to do with the way we think, the mindset we have. And part of that mindset is that we like to think in terms of burning money. You're young, and I hope you all enjoy fireworks. Fireworks are great, awesome, right? But hardly anybody really thinks about what fireworks are. They're nothing else but burning money. You look at it for a split second, and then it goes up in smoke. From the rational people in this virtual classroom, so not the silly ones, would you burn money? Probably, if you were interviewed, you would say, never I would burn money. Why would I burn money? I'm not silly. But the moment I talk to you about fireworks, you'll be like, fireworks, yeah. You're burning money, right? By the way, another thing that is like burning money is success. If you were the best athlete in 10th grade in any competition, probably the next year there's going to be somebody who is the new best athlete in 10th grade. So your success from the past evaporates. And this is one of the things we have to start thinking about when we're about to graduate or preparing for graduating from high school. What literally does success mean? What do I want to achieve? Because achievements and success are two completely different things. Achievement things are things that push you and take you further in life. By the way, an achievement can also be a setback, and you learn how to deal with it. Nonetheless, the way we see life is most of the time like this. We see it as success. We run from one success to the other. And those of you who have made it from kindergarten to 11th grade or 12th grade, you essentially for all those years ran from one success to the next. By the way, passing 10th grade has what value the moment you start 11th grade? No value. The moment you graduate from high school and you start your university studies, the value of your high school degree evaporates. It's worth nothing. I got my high school degree close to 40 years ago. I think nobody's ever asked me again. Nobody cares. Nobody's asked me, I think nobody's really asked me about my university degrees for the past 20 years. Now, if you have that mindset to run from one success to the next, you will not achieve things because you don't have the time to reflect and think about them. Now comes something really weird. And here I'll expose you to a bit of scientific research. There's a guy who wrote a really fun book. It's called The Happiness Advantage. And this guy got into Harvard University on a military scholarship. And he was 2 weeks at Harvard University, and he was sitting at Harvard University. The mess hall looks exactly like here at Hogwarts. And he was looking around, and everybody around him was looking grumpy, stressed, or angry. And he asked himself, wait, we're at the best university of this planet, where less than 1% of applicants get accepted to Harvard. And why are my fellow students all so unhappy? And so what he did is he focused part of his scientific journey at Harvard on happiness, and developed out of that a quite good, well-functioning company, and wrote a very fun book called The Happiness Advantage, where he looks at that difference between success and happiness, and what you can do, and how you can study with that in mind. So that is this idea that your mindset. So if you don't know what you want to study, how are you going to find out? And there's another fun research, and don't laugh. This woman, it took her only 10 years to come up with this equation. Her name is Angela Duckworth. She wrote a book called Grit based on her doctoral dissertation. And what she looked at is she looked at talented students and not so talented students. And then she looked at the amount of effort they put into their studies or their sports or anything. And it turned out that people with a talent often are not as good at achieving things as those people who don't have a talent. Why? Because the talented ones get lazy. They think their talent will be sufficient to compete in the outside world. Now, talent might be sufficient at school. But the moment you compete in a professional environment, be it as an athlete, or be it as a scholar, or be it as a business person, the talent is not anymore the quintessential part, but it is the effort. And it means effort leads you to developing a skill. And once you have a skill, you have to put, again, effort inside. Now, we Germans have a beautiful word for passion. It's called Leidenschaft, which literally means to create sorrow. If you want, as a German, I would tell you, only if you're willing to suffer will you achieve anything. And going to university defines your willingness of suffering for yourself. So you go to school for your parents and your teachers. The ones of you who are a bit talented and have understood that you're also going to school for yourself have a strategic advantage. But going to university, and this is the most important decision, if you go to university, you have to find something that you can develop a passion about. Now, I've been running a business school for 18 years. I have a master's degree in marketing. I did an MBA, and I have a master's degree in international relations. Studying business without passion is like going to a restaurant where you can't taste the food. You go there for the functionality. Why? Because if somebody says to you they're studying business, what does that mean? If you look around, if you look at your neighbors, look at your sneakers, your shoes, your backpacks, if you look at the cologne you're wearing, at the deodorant you're wearing, by the way, that's all business. Everything. From the glasses you're wearing, from the shorts you're wearing, from the tie you're wearing, from the shades in the room, from the white magnetic boards behind you, from the tables, it's all business. So if you say you're going to study business, it's like saying I'm studying something that is so ubiquitous that I can't develop a passion. This is regardless of what you want to study. Use your time now to research it. How much are you now willing to suffer? Are you willing to go home and spend 15, 20 minutes in the evening to understand what business, what literature, what type of literature, if you want to become a scientist, if you study physics, or if you study chemistry, organic, inorganic chemistry, if you want to study computer science, what type of computer science? Start researching. Most of us, when we're at school, we use very broad terms. Now, it's really difficult to develop this passion when you have broad terms. I can show you a guy who is one of my favorite guys because he was one of the people who installed passion in me. This guy is long before your time. His name is Orson Welles. And Orson Welles was a really excellent actor, great playwright, and he was one of the first one who had a great idea for a podcast. And I'm not mistaken, this is about 60 years ago. He made a podcast back then called a radio show on a Saturday when there were no TVs yet. There was no internet. And he started that podcast on the only one radio station like it was a news, saying, we have to inform you that aliens have landed on planet Earth. They've landed outside a little town, and people freaked. He was the first one to have the idea to, if you want, misuse for commercial senses radio station. And it was one of the biggest successes. And when he produced it, everybody said it was against it. It's one of the most exciting stories in media history. It's one of the most exciting business models, because it has to do with something really crazy. Regardless of what you study, but especially if you study business, one of the things you have to look at is becoming an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. Now, what does this mean? What it means is that you have a passionate mindset. A mindset where you are a calculating risk taker. Now, you can only be a calculating risk taker if you're able to evaluate the risk. And this is, by the way, going to university. My father was professor of forensic medicine. He was a 100% scientist. His experiments were always based on the academic models and theories to push the limits of science. Now, if you think business people aren't scientists, well, business people do that same thing as a scientist, with a small difference. My father's experiments all happened in a lab. If the experiment didn't work out, he tried again. But as a business person, you're always in the real world. You don't have a sandbox. You have no chance, and you have to, if you want, develop the sense of what are the opportunities, what are the risks. Let's pick on somebody where probably one you might know, and two you probably don't know. You've heard of Ikea. Ingvar Kamprad, by the way, no university education, he saw the opportunity. The fun part is, most people don't really understand the business model of Ikea because it's so in your face. The business model of Ikea, what does it live from? Does anybody have an idea? It lives from cheap labor, because you are the cheap labor who drives to Ikea, buys the stuff and builds it together. And those of you who are going to go to university, and you're probably going to end up living in a student apartment or a student dorm, you will end up going to Ikea. You will drive with your friends or with your car to Ikea or order it online, and you are the one who assembles it. The business model of Ikea literally lives on your cheap labor. The guy on the left is my favorite entrepreneur, Richard Branson. Richard Branson did something really funky. Richard Branson picked a fight with British Airways. He picked a fight with an airline which was essentially the British government. I guess if you're in Russia, you could compare it like picking a fight with Aeroflot. And he did this at a time where the British government was not very happy that there was a competitor to British Airways. So on the first day, when Richard Branson started his airline at Heathrow Airport, you know what the British government did? They closed down the terminal. So his passengers arrived and were told, oh, we're terribly sorry, this terminal is closed today. If you read his book, and I think the name of his book is Losing My Virginity, one of the best biographies about business. I love the title. It has a bit of a sense of humor. It's not as boring as most titles. And the guy on the right, by the way, I chose Larry Ellison because most of you don't know him, but he's up there with Bill Gates. He's up there with Sam Altman, Jeff Bezos. He was the guy who started Oracle. Oracle ended up being the backbone of a lot of databases when, if you want, information technology changed the way we do business. By the way, he's right now, you can count the billions on his bank account growing again because of AI and the necessary computing power and storage power you need. And all of them placed a very careful bet. And this bet is obviously done on the evaluation of opportunities. And this is why I, right at the beginning of my presentation, put this slide. Now, going to university, regardless of what you're going to study, you have to develop the passion for the academic models and theories. You have to study smart. Most people tend to study stupid. Studying smart means learning studying techniques to be able to cover vast amounts of information rapidly. Knowledge is a competitive advantage. In today's world, by the way, having the knowledge where to find more knowledge is a competitive advantage. You have no idea. I don't know how much you guys use AI, artificial intelligence, but I can tell you we use it at university every day. I could not imagine a life without AI anymore. Developing this passion, developing this ability to study smart because you are studying out of passion, out of fun, out of something you look forward to, is extremely rewarding. And regardless of what happens, it has a lot to do with overcoming this stupid unhappiness. And should you study business, Munich is, for example, a living example of an extremely successful city. Munich has a GDP which has grown in the last 11 years, but more than 30 billion. It has, as a city, now this is the thing, cities have become businesses. Last time I was in Moscow was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. That's where most of the streets in the city center of Moscow were renovated in order to be, as a city, more competitive, more attractive. So infrastructure investments. Munich has the lowest crime rate of any German city with more than 1 million inhabitants. We have a murder rate close to zero. Now, how does that impact the business of Munich? Well, Munich is the headquarters of Microsoft. It is the headquarters of Apple. It is the headquarters of Adobe. It is the headquarters not only of that, of the computer companies. It's also the headquarters of BMW. It's the headquarters of Siemens. It is the headquarters of Allianz and Munich Re. Most of you probably have never heard of the company called Munich Re. It's the world's largest reinsuring company. It's the company that insures insurances. And as announced last month, the new headquarters of OpenAI from ChatGPT will be in Munich. It's considered one of the most livable cities. It's got more than 95,000 registered companies of the DAX companies. By the way, in Munich, and I don't know how it's in Moscow, but in Munich, the fastest way to move around town is bicycle. We have more than 1,000 kilometers of bicycle path. Sounds, I don't know, who of you has ridden a bicycle in Moscow? I remember at the time when I visited Moscow, cycling was not a healthy thing to do. On the other side, we have an aspect of FC Bayern, those who are into football. Those who are into football probably know about FC Bayern. FC Bayern, the longtime winner of the German championship. And now comes the best part, the only club in the Champions League which is not bankrupt. So FC Bayern has been very profitable, whilst Barcelona and Madrid both have more than €1 billion debt. And this is, if you want, the environment where you study something. So your decision about where you want to study, how you want to study, always depends on your passion. Most people, by the way, most people I went to school with ended up going to university in Munich. They were too scared to study abroad. If you want, I was one of 10 who went to study abroad. I went first to Oxford, then to London. From London, I went to Vienna, and I ended up being an academic assistant at the University Politecnico of Milan. So I lived in the UK, I lived in Austria, and I lived in Italy. And that was part of my academic journey. I worked in all these countries. And I collected, if you want, that experience. And that means you need to make that decision. Whatever you study, how you study it, you can do the research now. Now, for example, if you choose a business school, go to their website, see if you have a picture of their faculty. Is the faculty alive? Are they there? If you study business, will you study business to become a scientist, or will you study business to go into the real world? Now, this is an important question, very simple. Why? Because it depends on what kind of faculty you want. Do you want a faculty that is a theoretical, scientific faculty? Now, for those of you who want to become scientists, that's the type of school you should look for. Those of you who want to do something more practical, look for universities of applied sciences. By the way, don't care about the reputations. There's a research that came out at the beginning of this year that for the first time in the history, it takes in the US somebody who graduated from an Ivy League school as long to find a job as somebody who graduated from a normal school. Now, the probability that you will find employment, by the way, or you find that thing that you're interested in, is directly correlated, one-to-one, if you're interested in the topic. If you studied something purely because all other people do it, or because you wanted to make your parents happy, you're not going to be achieving things. You might be successful, but as I showed in my slide before, you'll be running from one success to the next without achieving anything. So this decision process, I can only tell you, if you discover the passion of what drives you to go to university, your grades are going to be awesome. You're also going to find employment. In my case, I can tell you, I studied business for my parents, and I studied politics for my heart. My grades in politics were always better than my grades in business. Until I found the first right job. When I found my first right job, I enjoyed working and I got better and better and my studies went up. The more I enjoyed working, the more I understood the complexities of the business world. I ended up graduating summa cum laude with the highest possible marks. That has to do with passion, not learning by heart, vomiting it out. So, as my recommendation, I think we're a bit ahead of time, which makes you probably very happy. Our approach, and this should be your approach, is discover what makes you happy. And I'm not talking about the silly stuff. But even video games, technically. If you're really talented in video games, there's a career in esports now. And if you go into a career in esports, parallel get a bachelor's degree in business with a specialization in esports. Esports is not going away. If you're into whatever, discover it, follow it up. We've been quite successful. We're a boutique business school. We're tiny. We exist since 10 years, but by now, if I'm not mistaken, 12 of my students have started their own business. So I think the last guy is Harmas. Harmas is importing coffee from Ethiopia, and he is exporting coffee to Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and China. Lydia opened her management consulting company in Dubai. We have the biggest British American candy store here in the city center is run by Simon, and a master student of ours. The biggest platform for drone pilots is founded by 2 bachelor students of ours. They discovered their passion for business and their willingness to, if you want, suffer through studying and getting out of it a career based on their achievements. Thanks for listening.